back to Cop to Corporate. I'm Sammy, your podcast host. I'm here today with Carlos, Francisco, and Scot Walker of Corporate Security University. I'm super excited to talk to you two because you seem very smart and experienced in this corporate security. So if you could both just talk a little bit about yourselves and your background, that'd be great.
I'm Carlos Francisco. You probably see me out there as the corporate security translator. I have a book on the transition world, how to transition into the corporate world. And now we have this really cool website, Scott and I, Corporate Security University, that assists people in transitioning from that. I came from 21 years with the Walt Disney Company. I was a cop as well. And now I'm with one of the largest social media companies in the world. And I get to work with big time Scott. Scott, go.
So my story, Sammy, and thanks for being here. We love Brian, and Brian and I have been colleagues for about a decade, and I love what he's doing with Cop to Corporate. So we're honored to be on here and to be delivering our message, which is in support of Cop to Corporate. And so I spent, like Carlos, a few decades in federal law enforcement and the military as a criminal investigator. And I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I went in the private sector, found a mentor, joined a couple of Silicon Valley companies. One might be an iconic social media company that Carlos may or may not work for. And after I joined or got into the private sector, I was like, man, I work with so many good people in law enforcement that would be perfect in this industry. And when I would tell them about the things I do, because they'd be like, oh, what? So you like work IT security for some tech company, some gaming company, which it wasn't a gaming company, but they had no concept of what corporate security was, and that we had almost like the same types of issues that we had in law enforcement. You know, I worked all around the world doing law enforcement, and it was a great analogy and a great preparedness to get me into the private sector. So my sense of urgency was, hey, we need to help all these folks who are coming, especially our veterans coming out of the military. We've been at war for the last 20 plus years. We have hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be transitioning here or retiring. So how can we prepare them for a job in corporate security? Because corporate security needs those people with those experiences. I saw a lot of folks, and Carlos, we affectionately call them flashlight cops. I saw a lot of people like that in the private sector, that no military, no law enforcement background, nothing wrong with that, but they just didn't have the view of the world that we have as law enforcement military veterans.
Absolutely. And can you guys kind of go into what corporate security is and why you ended up starting this together?
Yeah, I can do that. Here we go. So this what happened. Scott and I, working together and actually meeting through this process of trying to always help people transition into the corporate world, right? We said, hey, let's make this thing happen. And what we saw was that there was this like growing demand for corporate security professionals out there. There was a lot of stuff going on in the world, and how do we prepare these folks, right? There's a lack of existing programs to really get them prepared for what corporate security is. Though they're both round, right? But one is an apple, the other one's an orange. It's not quite directly what we think it was. So that was a lack of that. So we need a more specialized curriculum also to focus on this complex thing called Corporate Security University, which is a myriad of things. So we put all that together, and then we said, okay, how can we create something else also that kind of fulfills a partnership and a networking opportunity for all those folks that are transitioning, right? To meet folks like me and Scott that kind of made the transition a long time ago in a land far, far and away, and be able to help them create a community. So here it is, Corporate Security University. That's exactly what it does. That's what we're creating. And, Scott will probably talk about a little bit more about it, not only the transition, but a lot of the other stuff that we're doing.
I think for me, we talk a lot about, especially in law enforcement, hard skills, and I know and I'm sure Brian, Cop to Corporate, have talked to a lot of people that say after coming out of law enforcement, hey, do you need gunslingers or door gunners or snipers or breachers or SWAT guys or canine guys in corporate security? And the answer is always no. We appreciate your service, but I need somebody who's got soft skills. And up until Cop to Corporate, I really think Brian was a trailblazer here. Carlos is a trailblazer here. with corporate security, the book he wrote on corporate security transition. And so what we realize is that the market had a need for additional learnings, and the one-to-one transition support is really hard. That's why I love this medium with the podcast, Cop to Corporate. Brian reaches, you all both, Brian and Sammy, reach out to so many more people and help them understand this industry. It is so different. And there are things like finance experience. How many of our law enforcement partners come out of the law enforcement with finance experience or budget experience? Well, you probably almost no unless you're in command staff. So we want to get you to the point where you understand how to be a good project manager. It's not catching bad guys and making arrests and doing criminal investigations. Sometimes you're going to do things that require a softer touch. And then how do you do that, by the way, in China, in Russia, in Israel, in France, in South America, because we're in global companies. And by the way, the world is decoupling right now. We're losing Russia and China. We're losing Eastern Europe. There's a lot of risk in the world right now. No better time to be in corporate security, because these corporations still have to operate. Their supply chains, our supply chains operate around the world. Our people travel around the world. They need people who are globally focused and understand all these risks, because the risks are not going away. They're only getting bigger, and we're losing the baby boomer generation. So all those corporate security professionals that are from that generation are retiring at 10,000 per day. So we're losing a ton of people out of this industry, and we need to replace them. But it's not a one for one, like Carlos said, apples and oranges. We need to replace them and give them the education and support so they can be successful, so our businesses and our economy can be safe around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely want that. And I love that you talked about soft skills, because there are so many cops out there who are like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And corporate security, or security in general, kind of seems like, although different, somewhat of a lateral move depending on what you do. So you've got the leadership skills, you've got the risk management and crisis management skills. So how do you recommend that cops who are looking to get out of law enforcement get into corporate security, and how can corporate security university help them out?
I'll touch up on a couple of classes that we have. So the way we recommend it, there's 3 classes that kind of been the staple of what we kicked off, Sammy, which is one of them is taking stock, right? Really trying to figure out where you are in your life and your career, what you really want in your future goals. Hey, is your family in line with you to go into this whole other career, right? You may have to move because wherever you're from, that opportunity might not be available there. So that's one of the classes that automatically starts getting the person that is transitioning to think about where you are and what you're doing. The second one that we have, which is probably one of the most important ones, is building connections. How do you build connections? Through LinkedIn and everything else that is available, social media, because, cops, we don't do social media, and we don't know, that's a hell no, we won't go. Well, we talk about that and building those connections and how important they are to getting you to where you want. And one of the third of the introduction class that we have is about branding yourself. How are you out there branding yourself today? That's extremely important, right? How the world sees you is extremely important. And by the way, if the world sees you well, it's easier for you to get the gig. The problem is that, once again, law enforcement folks, military folks, that's not what we do. Right. We're not the face of anything. I don't want to be out there like that. That's just not what we do. So that's some of the classes that we start and put together. But, and I'll let Scott speak to this, but there's so many other classes that we're designing. Our first round of classes now are in corporate security leadership, because that is different. And I think we're going to cover probably almost everything else. Right, Scott?
Yeah, one of our biggest questions that we get from transitioners, especially, is what is corporate security? They don't even know what it means, and they think, is it the guy who walks around the mall with the Smokey the Bear hat on and a flashlight? And it's not. Pretty much every major corporation, especially publicly traded corporations, have somebody responsible for security in some way, and so we're driving people to understand and realize that there's a lot of intricate skills that are required to run and manage and mitigate risk in these organizations, and corporate security leaders are just part of that. But what we always tell our transitioners, especially coming out of the military, is understand that you're running a business, you're running a line of business, and while security, corporate security and safety, if you will, are our product or our service, we have to be business minded. And that's really hard for people who've never had to manage a budget and never been accountable for anything. I mean, what did we just do in Afghanistan? We left billions of dollars in military equipment behind, right? And so if you did that in a corporation, you'd be fired. So, maybe there's some people in government that should be fired for that. But my point is that the translation for the transition needs to happen, so we understand that we are business leaders first, and that our product and services and our customers, internal and external, is that sense of safety and security.
And even more to that too, which is always interesting to me, is the ability for folks to understand that are transitioning, like things like corporate policies and corporate liability stuff, right? Because when you're a cop out there, you're either dealing, I don't know, with some kind of local ordinance or a state statute or something like that, which is not very corporate driven. It's not very corporate liability driven. So one of the things that we're focusing on is going to be like, all right, how do we educate the folks that are transitioning or somebody that just started in the industry, how important it is to write policies and procedures and post orders that are driven by company liability risks instead of, well, I'm a cop. I should have guns in here, right? Isn't it the right thing to do? No, that might not be the right thing to do. But it's really what Scott said, is taking all the transition pieces, prepare folks for the next level, along with folks that are already in the security industry that just don't have, like I said, the specialized curriculum that was never built for corporate security, the lack, right, of existing courses for corporate security. So all of those things were taken into consideration as we're designing the courses and curriculum.
That's amazing. I think you guys are going to help a lot of people. And on their website, corporatesecurityuniversity.com, they have all of their courses that you can take, a lot of information about the company. Is there any last thoughts you guys would like to add about it?
Everybody who is listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, is involved with Cop to Corporate. Just realize when you land that ideal role, because that's my hope for you, is that you find that your purpose in life, whatever that might be, where you want to be. Make sure you give back, whether that's volunteerism, whether that's helping your old partners from your agency transition as well, or help them realize what the private sector is like. Because transition might not mean that you go get a job in a major corporation. Transition may mean you start your own job, you start your own company. That's okay too. None of this is bad. What I want is you to be in the economy. Come in, get into the economy, stay in the economy for as long as possible. That's going to help everybody.
I think that's great advice. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys. We're going to link all your links on our LinkedIn. And if anybody has any questions for them, I'm sure you guys are willing to take people reaching out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.